Ron DeSantis obviously we talked a little bit about it before. He has the new curriculum for American history and history books, specifically around slavery, where there's a section within that actual curriculum. This is specifically for middle schoolers about whether slaves benefited or not from slaves. Now, in terms of the benefit language, it was basically billed as like, in some cases, they learned trades which were later on useful to them. So this obviously has exploded in terms of political controversy. DeSantis himself not backing down at all. He gave a very spirited defense of it at a press conference. Here's what he had to say.
Well, you should talk to them about it. I mean, I didn't do it, and I wasn't involved in it. But I think what they're doing is I think that they're probably going to show some of the folks that eventually parlayed, being a blacksmith into doing things later in life. But the reality is all of that is rooted in whatever is factual. They listed everything out. And if you have any questions about it, just ask the Department of Education. You can talk about those folks. But I mean, these were scholars who put that together.
So, Krystal, since this has come to light, it has now become a major controversy, not just in actually the liberal media, but many black MAGA Republicans specifically, some also non-MAGA. One of them is Senator Tim Scott, running for president, who called out Ron DeSantis on the campaign trail. Here's what he had to say.
There's no silver lining in freedom, in slavery. The truth is that anything you can learn, that any benefits that people suggest you had during slavery, you would have had as a free person. What slavery was really about separating families, about mutilating humans, and even raping their wives. It was just devastating. So I would hope that every person in our country, and certainly running for president, would appreciate that. And listen, people have bad days. Sometimes they regret what they say, and we should ask them again to clarify their positions.
Ask them again to clarify their position. Interestingly enough, now, like as I alluded to, this has also become a major thing amongst black MAGA Republicans. So let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. So we got two individuals here. One is Congressman Byron Donalds. Interestingly enough, he's from Florida. So he says, quote, "The new African-American standards in Florida are good, robust, and accurate. That being said, the attempt to feature the personal benefits of slavery is wrong and needs to be adjusted. That obviously wasn't the goal, and I have faith that the Florida Department of Education will correct this." Then John James, who actually ran for Senate in Michigan, now he's a congressman. He says, quote, "Ron DeSantis, number one, slavery was not CTE. Nothing about 400 years of evil was, quote, a net benefit to my ancestors. Number two, there were only 5 black Republicans in Congress. You are attacking 2 of them. My brother in Christ, if you find yourself in a deep hole, put the shovel down. You are now so far from the party of Lincoln, your ed board is rewriting history. You're personally attacking conservatives like Tim Scott and Byron Donalds. On the topic of slavery, you have gone too far. Stop."
Ooh.
And also from the campaign, the thing is that the campaign too is also not holding back, Krystal. When she's a spokesperson, a member of the DeSantis campaign, Christina Pushaw, is attacking now Tim Scott, Byron Donalds, and John James as repeating Kamala Harris talking points. So things are getting vicious here.
Yeah.
There's some interesting valences actually to the entire fight, but I'm curious what you think.
Well, there's a few things. I mean, first of all, I think the comments from Tim Scott and Byron Donalds, by the way, were so mild. His critique there, so mild.
It's good, robust, and
but there's this what he said. Yeah. He's like, I got this one little bit. Overall, it's fine, right?
Yes.
And what caused this really to blow up was Christina Pushaw and other DeSantis team members who were viciously attacking Donalds and Trump supporters, getting into this whole messy online fight. And then that's what causes John James to come and be like, hold on a second. Let's be clear about what's going on here. So they're creating this issue for themselves in their incredibly thin-skinned reaction to what was going on here. And then, of course, let's go and put the last element, C5, up on the screen. Of course, the Trump campaign can't resist getting in on this as well. This is a statement from Jason Miller. And it's interesting the way they frame this because they don't directly address in this statement the, personal benefit to slavery situation directly. But they say Congressman Byron Donalds is a conservative hero. The Republican Party is lucky to have him as leader. President Trump's honored to have his endorsement. If he thinks something is BS, he'll tell you that's why we like him so much. For the official office of the governor and what's left of Ron DeSantis' presidential campaign to attempt to smear Congressman Donalds like this is a disgrace. It's indicative of why DeSantis has plummeted faster than any presidential candidate in history. DeSantis needs to look in the mirror, recognize that at his current trajectory, it's not just 2024 that is dead for him, but 2028 as well. DeSantis's continued misguided attacks are only helping Joe Biden. And if that's his goal, DeSantis should just get out of the race. So I mean, Trump, of course, taking full advantage of this, and now we're hearing this mantra repeated multiple times from him that, listen, it's over, guys, get out of the race, and let's all come together to defeat Joe Biden. But to me, there's three things here, Saagar. I mean, first of all, I think DeSantis completely mishandled this curriculum. He should have known it would have been under intense scrutiny. And it wasn't just the slavery situation. You also have them like both siding race massacres where white people lynched black people and being like, let's also talk about the violence from the black people too. So you have that piece. You have him mishandling the issue itself. You have this overly online, freak out over some incredibly mild critique from Tim Scott and Byron Donalds. And then you also have what we were discussing before. How do you think the donors who have been behind him, how do you think that they are going to feel about this whole flap?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have complicated feelings. I personally would have handled it in a more confident manner. And I would have said, I'm not going to take lectures on slavery from people who mischaracterized the 1619 Project and said that the American Revolution was about slavery. And I would have just ended it there. That's what I would have stuck to. But they decided to litigate it. And when you I heard a joke once. It's like, anytime you're trying to add a but to the end of slavery, you should just stop and slap yourself. And I think it's true. I mean, look, we can sit here and we can have a long discussion around curriculum. I actually would love to do that. So I have a couple of books if anybody's interested, and podcasts. So people who if you actually want to learn, I would listen to the Dan Carlin most recent history on specifically chattel African slavery. The Hugh Thomas book, again, on the history of African slavery. Both are incredible. They're deep historical texts. If you really want to know what happened, those are the books I would read. If you want to know about the American context and specifically the end of slavery, Battle Cry of Freedom is the best one-volume book that actually exists on the American Civil War. And then there's also Parting the Waters, a 3-part series about the Civil Rights era. So anyway, those are actual historical texts. That's what I would recommend. Those are all accepted, at least at one time, were by left and by right. But it does come back to, look, it's a complicated issue. Politically, valence in terms of like the way that you're going to attack it. If you were going to do it in the way that they did, I think it should have come back to confidence. But instead, you're getting a bit of a whiny kind of back and forth that DeSantis is engaging here. We have some video from the campaign trail that illustrates what I'm talking about. Let's take a listen.
Were there beneficial aspects to slavery?
That's not what the curriculum says.
What do you think?
No, it's not. And the curriculum is very clear. You have, I think it's like 200 plus pages of all kinds of stuff that you can't read that. Have you read it?
So what's your opinion?
Have you read it?
I'm asking your opinion.
But you haven't read it, so I'm just making that clear. That makes it very clear about the injustices of slavery in vivid detail. So anyone that actually read that and then listens to Kamala would know that she's lying. And that particular provision about the skills, that was in spite of slavery, not because of. The AP course has made that same point.
So, like I said, you're going to sit there and you're going to litigate with the buts. I just think you're in more of a losing position. I will say, at least on this, I think Byron Donalds and John James are being dishonest because these are straight up MAGA guys who we all, by the way, go look at what they've said about Trump or whatever on Charlottesville. There is a huge element of just attacking DeSantis to try to get him out of the race. So look, you could call me racist if you want. I personally just doubt sometimes the sincerity of these like ultra MAGA politicians who clearly, I think, are being weaponized in order to go after DeSantis on a political level. And do they believe it or not? I don't know. But the reason I think Tim Scott is being sincere is Scott has never coded himself like MAGA or whatever. He's running for president, but he has always kind of been a dissenting voice on racial politics within the GOP. So I'm not gonna say that about him. But the other two, having watched them kiss Trump's ass like repeatedly, and also seeing the way that the Trump campaign was like using their statements in order to validate criticism, I can't help but maybe it's serious, maybe it's not, but I do think that has to be thrown out there.
I'm not gonna listen. I have no idea about their sincerity on this, because the other way that you could read it, and I actually think this is perhaps more in what I'm inclined to believe, is the fact that they feel comfortable voicing this kind of dissent with Ron DeSantis, and they did not feel comfortable voicing this kind of dissent with Donald Trump. It just shows you what a stronger figure he is within the Republican Party. Because, I mean, listen, again, though, I want to say with Byron Donalds' initial comments, they were so mild And if the DeSantis campaign had said nothing about them, honestly, this all probably would be over now. But there's nothing the media wants to cover more, and that, you know, is more like actually significant to the race than this big blow up between Ron DeSantis and now 3 out of 5 of the black elected Republicans at the national level. So what I looked at this and thought is like, if Trump did the exact same thing, remember he had his like patriotic education initiative or whatever the hell it was. If he did the exact same thing, maybe Tim Scott would have spoken up. There would have been very little dissent from it. There would have been much more rallying around it. There would not have been this whole blow up because he just can get away with things that other candidates cannot get away with. And so to me, the fact that you do have this whole ugly, messy intra-Republican fight breaking out into the public around DeSantis's history curriculum in the state of Florida, it's another sign of his weakness within the Republican Party.
That, there's no disputing that whatsoever.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.